was a period of great artistic and other advances in arts. And Niccolo Machiavelli was what we can call like one of the most important rebirthers of politics. His complete name is Niccolo di Bernato de Machiavelli, like very long, but he's better known as Niccolo Machiavelli. He was born on May 3 of 1469, and he lived all his life in what is actually Florence, Italy, but was in that time the Florentine Republic. He was a politician, a diplomat, a historian and writer, and he was also a philosopher and humanist. That characteristics are like proper for a Renaissance man. He died on June 1527 in Florence, and some of his most important works are The Prince, that is his masterwork, and The Prince is like his most important book, and The Art of War, and Florentine Histories. The Art of War is like one of his most important political stories, because he says that the people will either fight for their liberty than the ruler, and that's like the art of war, like making people go to war, supposedly because they're fighting for their liberty. He's really important because he's considered the father of modern political sciences that are like the study of state, nation, and government. And he gave really new ideas, because no one had ever dared to say these ideas, because they can like often be seen as violent. These new ideas are like on how to get and remain in power, but never like being loyal to his own people. Instead, like being all for himself, doing everything for himself. So he revolutionized principles for ruling, because these new guidelines have been received before. Political sciences are really important because they have an impact in our daily lives. Like they influence our politics, our economy, if we go to war or conflicts and everything with our country. He was a Renaissance figure because he gave me ideas for ruling, and he had a really two characteristics that make him like a really Renaissance man, because he was a philosopher. So he used like knowledge from Greeks and Latin texts instead of finding Christian values, and this was controversial and important at the same time. And he was a Renaissance humanist. Like he gave like ideas of that everything was on this Greek and Latin text, and that they were more important than the church and all them Christian messages. His masterwork, The Prince, is the book that reflects like every lesson he gave, because the most important are in his book, in which he critiques traditional moral norms and ideologies in the exercise of power. These critics like are really controversial, because no one has ever seen something like that before. He gave these guidelines for an ideal ruler that should be violent, kind of violent with his own people, and so he will have complete rule over his people, and he will give fear to them, so they didn't dare to revolt. And also he will give fear to other kingdoms, because they will get they won't like dare to mess up with him. And some of his most important quotes are, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, you experience what you really are." And he means by this quote that maybe his people may see him as violent and a horrible person, and he's like the worst person ever, right? But the few that experience what he really is like his family, his familiars, his loved ones, and because a ruler may be harsh when everyone sees him, like the public, but with his family, he's supposed to be different. Also, if an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that that man, vengeance needs not to be feared, and he means like this man who who deserves a punishment, well, according to the ruler, should receive like the worst punishment he can receive. So horrible that he never dares to give a vengeance to him or revolt or do anything wrong again. And also, it is much safer to be feared than loved. This is probably the most important quote he made, the most controversial and the most popular too, because he means that if you are feared, no one will dare to mess with you, right? No one will revolt. And but if you are loved, you are like more likely to get thrown out of power, because if you fail, the people will revolt against you because they are not afraid of you. They don't have like any real respect. He was often criticized, and his skills, like his methods, although that methods still shape some of our actual political systems, because that his guidelines and methods can often be seen as brutal and unprincipled, because these guidelines were like of fear and violence, and that rulers shouldn't care about their people or about laws and moral codes or ethics, just about how to get and maintain power, and about war, of course. And he was also hardly criticized by the church and the papacy, because he stated in the Art of War that the state should be and is completely superior and supreme over the church. And this was really controversial, and this was one of the reasons that the church and the Medici family in Florence persecuted him sometimes, because his guidelines were like of Martin Luther, that later revolted against the church. And so he was like the church turned out against him. And his ethics were like that a ruler shouldn't follow like values and morals or ethics, only like authority, war, how to get it, and maintain it. So Niccolo Machiavelli was really important, because the Renaissance was a period in which everything changed, like new ideas came by. And although these ideas may not, we may not agree with these ideas, the ideas are not wrong, not completely wrong, because his ethics are violent and can be seen as brutal, but they're true. Like some major nations that were very powerful in the past, like the Soviet Union, took some of his guidelines, and they were very powerful. Thank you.